The greatest performances in the history of NCAA basketball may come soon at March Madness. Maybe the future stars will show us something we've never seen before. And with the tournament on the horizon, let's revisit the best stat lines in college basketball history. But before we do, we need to narrow the selections down to 5. And it's not an easy task to do. However, we trimmed down the list to the players who led their schools to the national championship. After all, what good are their stats if they were unable to win it all? Imagine a player with an impressive stat line carrying his team to a title. That would be the icing on the cake for the greatest performances in college basketball history. And without further ado, let's check on the greatest performances in the history of NCAA basketball. And while some players are expected to be on this list, you'll be surprised to hear other names that you're probably unfamiliar with. Let's start with number 5. Ed O'Bannon, UCLA, 1995. The first name on this list is probably unknown in today's generation, but Ed O'Bannon was the undisputed leader of the UCLA Bruins championship team in 1995. That was the same team that featured 6 NBA players, including his brother Charles. At this time, O'Bannon was a senior and was planning to graduate with a championship, although despite being the main star for the Bruins, O'Bannon wasn't highly touted in the NBA draft. The Bruins lost only 2 games throughout that year and almost had a scare in their second round win against the 8th-seeded Missouri. In that tournament, O'Bannon averaged 20 points, 10 rebounds, and almost 3 assists per game. In the championship game against Arkansas, the UCLA Stars scored 31 points and 18 rebounds. And with that, UCLA finally won their first title since 1975, the last season that John Bruin coached the Bruins. And until now, they still haven't won another title. Danny Manning, Kansas, 1988. In his final year with the Kansas Jayhawks, Danny Manning's senior year stats were pretty impressive. However, the Jayhawks struggled during the regular season, but their 21-11 record was good enough to be placed as the 6th seed in their division. Manning and the Jayhawks entered the NCAA tournament with the focus on beating everyone in their path regardless of their position. And with that, Manning arguably had the most impressive run in March Madness to defy the odds. In that tournament, Manning averaged 27.2 points, 9.3 rebounds, and 2.3 blocks. He shot almost 60% from the field and produced monster stats in each of his games in the tournament. Manning's least productive stat was a 24-point, 12-rebound performance against Xavier in the opening round. Meanwhile, he saved his best performance in the championship round when they defeated Oklahoma State to win the title. Manning scored 32 points, grabbing 19 rebounds and recording 3 blocks. He eventually became the top overall pick in the 1988 NBA draft. Glen Rice, Michigan, 1989. If you watch Glen Rice in his latter years, you can only think of him as a player who played 1,000 games for 6 different teams in 15 seasons. But if you watch him in his prime, Rice was one of the greatest offensive scorers in both the NBA and the NCAA. And with his performance that year, Rice led the Michigan Wolverines to their only national championship in 1989. Rice also happens to hold the record for most points in a single NCAA tournament with 184 points. That puts his average to 30.8 points, 6.6 rebounds, and 2.1 assists per game. To put things into perspective, the second highest single NCAA tournament for points is Maryland's Juan Dixon with 155 points in 2002. And in the title-clinching game against Seton Hall, Rice went off with 32 points and 12 rebounds. He left Michigan with numerous school records, such as having the most career points, single-season scoring, and single-season field goals made, among others. Lew Alcindor, UCLA, 1968. While Michael Jordan is arguably the NBA's greatest player of all time, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar makes a case for himself with that regard. But in high school and college, Abdul-Jabbar is definitely the basketball GOAT, then known as Luol. He led UCLA to 3 consecutive championships, and in his Bruins debut, Alcindor became an instant superstar by scoring 56 points against Houston in 1966. But his greatest single-season tournament may have come in 1968 when he led the Bruins then to their 4th NCAA championship. Alcindor averaged 26.8 points, 19.8 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game that year. Until now, averaging almost 20 and 20 is an incredible stat line for any type of player. We could have picked his 2 other seasons, but we think the middle one had the best stats throughout his collegiate career. Alcindor capped the year with 37 points. Alcindor capped the year with 37 points against North Carolina to clinch a national championship. Bill Walton, UCLA, 1973. Alcindor may have a better overall collegiate career, but Bill Walton one-upped him with the best single-season performance in 1973. During his time with UCLA, Walton also led the Bruins to 3 national championships. But the most impressive figure is when he led his team to 2 consecutive undefeated seasons. It was also during this time when UCLA won 88 straight games spanning over 3 seasons. In his junior year, Walton averaged 25 points and 16 rebounds. But the best games happened as the tournament progressed. He scored 34 points to lift the Bruins in the Final Four, and during the championship round, Walton scored 44 to clinch the title against Memphis. To this day, Walton still holds the record for the most points by an NCAA champion in the final game. And those are 5 greatest performances in the history of NCAA basketball. I'm Ben Cuevas from Watson Sports. For more content just like this, head on over to watsonsports.com.